When I saw the message my wife, Rachel, had sent to her sister, I wasn't snooping. I was simply using our shared tablet to check some work files. Her conversation was open on the screen, a message she'd sent just an hour earlier. Asterisk, I'm keeping the lake house, it just makes sense. Asterisk. I froze for a moment, staring at the words. Keeping the lake house. It was a small cabin we both owned together, a peaceful place by the water where we went every summer. The keeping part sounded final. As if a decision had been made, one I hadn't been part of. For a few minutes, I just sat there, trying to make sense of it. Rachel and I had been married for 7 years. We had our differences. She loved planning everything, and I was more of a go-with-the-flow type. But lately, I had noticed she'd been distant, quiet, and often lost in thought. When she came home later that evening, she seemed calm, almost too calm. I waited until after dinner to bring it up. "Hey," I said gently, "I saw your message to your sister about keeping the lake house." She looked surprised, not angry, just startled that I'd seen it. "Oh," she said after a pause. "You saw that?" Her voice was soft, and for a moment, the silence between us felt heavier than the question itself. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I did." "What did you mean by that?" She sighed, pulling out a chair and sitting down. "It's not what it sounds like," she said. "I wasn't talking about keeping it from you. I was talking about keeping it for us." I frowned, confused. "Then why did it sound like a decision?" She rubbed her forehead. "Because I've been thinking about how disconnected we've become lately. You barely take time off work, and every time I mention going to the lake, you say you're too busy. That place means something to me, to us, and I don't want to lose it just because life keeps pulling us apart." Her words softened something inside me. I hadn't realized how much the lake house meant to her. For me, it was just another property we owned. For her, it was a piece of peace we'd built together. "I guess I've been caught up in work," I admitted. "I didn't realize how much I've been missing out on." Rachel smiled faintly, though her eyes were still tired. "It's not about blame. I just want to hold on to something that reminds me of when we were happy, when things were simple." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about our weekends by the lake, how she used to paint on the porch while I fished by the dock, the way the sunsets would turn the water gold. Somewhere along the way, we had traded those moments for deadlines and late emails. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee for both of us. When she walked into the kitchen, I said, "Let's go to the lake this weekend." Her eyes widened. "Really?" I nodded. "Yeah." No work, no calls. Just us. When we arrived that weekend, the cabin was dusty but still familiar. The quiet hum of the lake greeted us like an old friend. Rachel smiled for the first time in weeks as she opened the windows and let the fresh air in. I watched her move around the house, and it hit me, this wasn't just a place. It was a reminder of the version of us we had almost forgotten. We spent the whole weekend talking, cooking, and walking by the water. There were no arguments, no distractions, just two people remembering why they had fallen in love in the first place. On the last night, as the stars shimmered above the lake, she leaned on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm glad you came back here with me." I looked at her and smiled. "I'm glad you never gave up on this place." She smiled back, "I didn't just mean the lake." That moment said more than words could. We both realized that keeping the lake house wasn't about ownership, it was about holding on to something worth saving. It wasn't the walls or the water that mattered. It was what they represented, time, love, and the quiet effort to keep something alive even when it starts to fade. In the end, Rachel was right. Keeping the lake house did make sense. But not because it was a house. It was because it had become a symbol of us finding our way back home.